Teachers have read it. What is your best? Read the note to the class. Story. In high school, a girl in class passed a note to another girl, asking if she had a pad or tampon. Teacher completely blew up, started yelling at them, and asked them to read it out loud. They did, and the teacher, who was an older man, immediately calmed down and let it go. I think he was more embarrassed than the girls. Not a teacher, but there was one teacher who was really cool, but still took his teacher job seriously. One lesson, there is a note being passed around. Because of the giggling, he sharpened his senses and honed in on the note's location and intercepted the handoff. Did that, getting ready for a speech, cough, opened the note and laughed. The note said, "Giggle and pass it on." There was another time he intercepted a note that said, "Happy birthday Mr. _." One time a student had passed a note and I asked it to be read out. Read, fish to take KKN. Bastards had been playing a game of fucking correspondence chess during my lesson. I let them carry on. Not a teacher, but once I wrote a love letter to a guy when I was 9 years old. When I got caught, a guy took the blame and read it to the whole class. He never said who wrote it. Thank you, Devin. My then fiancée was a high school math teacher. One day she thought she saw a note being passed, but she wasn't sure, so she waited. Then she thought she saw it again. Finally she saw it, walked over, and took it. It was a wedding card, signed by half of the class before she took it. She cried. Edit, yes, she's now my wife. Not a teacher, but something one of my teachers told me outside of school. The students were learning about properties of rocks and minerals. The first student wrote "What's cleavage?" on a note, referencing the mineral property. The second student responded with a human anatomy description. A positive spin. I was long-term subbing a class. One day I noticed students discreetly passing around a piece of paper while I was teaching. I went to retrieve it, and discovered it was a petition signed by each student requesting I remain their teacher for the rest of the year. Smiley face. Not really a note, but when I was teaching college classes, I caught two of the girls whispering, so I told them, if you're going to tell secrets, you need to share with the rest of the class. I taught preschool before this. She looked right at me, and said, without the slightest embarrassment, I was just telling her that I think you have a cute butt. A couple weeks later, at a baseball game paid for by the school, she came on to me really hard, with my fiancé right there. In health class, we were talking about boners and how they fill up with blood. My cousin took a piece of paper and wrote, "Your penis is filled with blood," and threw it at some popular kid. The teacher picked it up and you can see him die inside because of the immaturity of 8th graders and how he has to teach them for a career. My favorite wholesome note will always be, "Shut up Josh, you did not hook up with Maddie last night. You are gayer than Mr. Dinosaurregul Akeem, we all support and love your gay B***tch ass." I did not read the note aloud. I just put it down and said, "Watch your language." Not a teacher, but when I was in high school, I started a note from the back row of the class, which was passed and read by nearly everyone in the class. The teacher grabbed it as it went past him, when there was only 3 people left who hasn't read it. I think he was going to read it out to the class, but he looked at it before he read it. All the note said was that the zip on his pants was down. With all respect to him, he calmly zipped up and continued teaching. I was in 6th grade, not a teacher. The teacher read aloud a note these 2 kids were passing back and forth. It was just all the lyrics to Low by Flo Rida. One day in middle school, right around when the Nintendo Wii came out, you could add other friends online for certain compatible online Wii games by sharing a serial code of like 16 numbers or something around there. Sitting in the back of our 7th period science class, 3 of my friends and I started to exchange and write down our Wii serial codes on a small piece of paper. We'd pass it down and share it as we passed it and copy them in our notebooks. Our teacher pauses his lecture as he looks at us. He just gets up from the front of the class, walked to our row where the 4 of us sat, put his hand out to my buddy for the paper with all of our serial codes on in, takes a moment to glance at it only to see a matrix of random numbers followed by the first letter of our names. He then glances up at us and then to my buddy with the most dumbfounded stare, squints, and asked, "Is this some kind of joke? 'Cause I'm clueless on this one." We told him after class and he understood, but also said he was expecting some sort of elaborate code that we were encrypting messages in. Haha. 8th graders, talking about reproduction in class, semen comes up. The note passed said, Isn't the proper science term C_M? Wonderful. Not a note, but an anonymous question to the class. In health class in freshman year of high school, we had to anonymously write questions about sexuality and the reproductive process, and the teacher would pull out a random card, read the question, and respond with a textbook answer. Said teacher was very religious, and very open about her faith in a way that almost seemed patronizing. So I was surprised when she pulled out and read a card that said, "What does the word C_NT mean?" She looked at the card, looked at us all calm, and then proceeded to pull up Wikipedia and other web media to inform us of the origin of the word, its connotation, and how it's used differently around the world. I was kind of shocked that she just wanted us to know what it meant, as if to say, don't look like a dumb F_CK if you want to use this word in a sentence. Somewhat related, but in 8th grade history a girl was too talkative and the teacher yelled, "Hey, why don't you try teaching the class?" And the girl said okay and got up, took the textbook and started teaching. She did it perfectly and didn't miss a beat. It was hilarious. Another non-teacher here, but my 7th grade teacher typically always wore a dress shirt to class and looked very presentable, but this day he had his sleeves rolled up. Now, everyone loved this teacher, but my immediate thought was to write a note to my friend sitting beside me that his arms were super hairy, and that note was passed back and forth with us cracking jokes about it. Nothing malicious or overly mean, just that we didn't think he'd have such hairy arms. We eventually got caught, and between classes he took us aside and warned us to not pass notes, and since this was the first time this happened he would toss it out without reading it and let us go. Well, a couple months go by and he decides to wear short sleeves again, and his arms were noticeably less hairy. I know 12-year-olds don't have the greatest moral compass, but to this day I still feel so bad that my dumbass little note might have made him so self-conscious about something so unimportant. I'm sorry, Mr. Fifield, wherever you are now, sad face. Not a teacher. Someone in my class had a cold and wiped their snot into a scrap piece of paper, as they didn't have a tissue. They then scrunched it up and left it on the side of their desk. Teacher saw this, thought it was a note and grabbed the paper, going through the usual fanfare of the importance not passing notes around. The look on her face when she opened it was priceless. In 7th grade science class my friend and I passed notes to each other through the guys sitting between us. Our teacher caught on of the boys with the note but knew it wasn't him because it had enough doodles of hearts/flowers on it. She opened it up to read to the class to catch whoever did write it. However, the note was written completely in Tolkien's Elvish alphabet and she couldn't read a word. Most of the class knew that it had to be me and my friend cause we're the only Lord of the Rings nerds in the class obsessed enough to teach ourselves the Elvish alphabet, but thankfully no one ratted us out. We were hoping that writing notes in Elvish would keep the boys from reading about my friend's massive crush on one of them, but it ended up also saving us from getting in trouble. I don't have one because humiliating students is unethical and ineffective at correcting poor behavior. My sister-in-law was in 7th grade and was passing notes with a friend. The particular note she was writing one day explicitly called the teacher an asshole. When she was caught with the note, instead of reading it out loud, she ran to the restroom and flushed it down the toilet. This story is frequently shared at family get-togethers. Not me, but a friend of mine who taught 7th grade. He found a note and was about to read it to the class, but when he opened it, the note read, "I want you to crack an egg in my SS and FCK me so hard it scrambles." He immediately put it in his locked desk drawer without reading it out loud, and it's now laminated and hung up on his fridge at home. Had a student give a presentation on a historical math figure. Asked if he could use his phone for notes. Literally read the Wikipedia page to the class. As soon as I realized it, I displayed it on the projector behind him. Helped my buddy and professor out one time a few years ago. The professor had warned the students to not leave their ringers on in class, or else he would throw the phone out of the window. Everyone assumes he is not serious. My friend was getting rid of his cell phone and offered it up as a sacrifice. I called my friend at a scheduled time. My friend said hello and then the professor walked over, grabbed the phone and threw it out of the room. I was told the whole class was stunned. We had an exchange student in our speech class and the teacher caught him reading a note. She asked him to read it out loud and he immediately gets beat red in the face. Just as he opens his mouth, she asks him to read it in his native language. Croatian is a beautiful language in case you are wondering, especially when the speaker is a hot guy. Me and a friend in high school used to pass notes back and forth writing song lyrics as we went. This day we were doing the lyrics to David Bowie's Labyrinth Magic song and I had to stand up and read it. The teacher got even angrier because she didn't believe that was on the note, so she stormed up and snatched the note from my hand. When she realized the note indeed did remind her of the babe, she cracked up laughing before asking us to stop. Not as a teacher, but in middle school when I was busy writing short stories to my classmates, my teacher busted me. He asked me to read the whole story. Probably late, but in 8th grade the teacher took the note and made me read it. I didn't even think to make something up. So I blurted out what was on it. We Beat the Meats, the story of 3 male prostitutes who made it the hard way. Parody of We Beat the Streets. Thought I was so clever. Friend of mine got caught. Teacher, read the note. I like cheese. That was literally it. This was followed by a short conversation discussing different types of cheese, ranging from pepper jack to parmesan. Not a teacher, but junior year in high school I got caught passing a note to my friend. The teacher took the note and looked at it, as if she was going to read it out loud. She decided to make me stay after class and talk to her. The note told my friend that I was pregnant.